Good evening. Hi, my name is Ben Kelson, and together with Jeff Grazel, I want to thank you all for joining us for the JDCA New Jersey Chapter 2024 kickoff meeting. We are really excited to welcome you all back. I see that we have with us June Fisher, the matriarch of the New Jersey Jewish Democrats. So thank you for coming, June. In case you're unfamiliar, the JDCA works to mobilize Jewish voters to advocate for policies and to support Democrats who share our core values, including our support for reproductive rights, protecting freedom and democracy, fighting climate change, promoting justice and equality, supporting Israel, and combating anti-Semitism and all other forms of hate. For those who don't know me, as I said, my name is Ben Kelson. I'm an Orthodox rabbi and an attorney. I was raised in Teaneck and still live in the area, about 1,000 yards or so into Bergenfield. I've been a vice chair of Rabbis for Obama, a member of Rabbis for Biden. I was a member of the NJDC, and I've worked as a liaison for the Jewish community with members of Congress, Governors Corzine and Murphy, and the Obama and Biden administrations. And now I am happy to say that with Jeff, I am one of the chapter leads for the Jewish Democratic Council of America's New Jersey chapter. With the 2024 election quickly approaching, we are relaunching JDCA's New Jersey chapter to help elect Democrats here at home in New Jersey and across the country. Our efforts are going to include everything from chapter events with special guests so that we can expand our knowledge of our policy priorities and the electoral landscape. We're going to have phone banks for our endorsed candidates across the country and more. And as Jewish Democrats, we need to start mobilizing and engaging Jewish voters in support of President Biden and Democrats running in competitive districts across the country. Among the issues that are important to JDCA and to all of us as Jewish Democrats is Israel's safety and security. And I recently returned from a trip to Israel, and my time there was incredibly powerful and moving. It made me even more grateful to have elected Democratic leaders like President Biden, who have been consistent and vocal in their support for Israel. When I was in Israel, I spent a great deal of time in the South visiting Be'eri, Kfar Aza, the site of the Nova Festival, and the IDF's launching point at the Gaza border. And I sat with families of the hostages and victims of the attacks, survivors, the wounded, and soldiers. And I was horrified by many of the stories that they told me, but I was also deeply inspired by the morale and the unity that they showed in the face of such horrible events and the terror that they have faced. And they reminded me, though, why the work that we do is so important. So to kick us off tonight, I'm going to ask JDCA's CEO Halie to speak more about the JDCA's efforts to re-elect President Biden and other Democrats across the country. Then we will also hear from the JDCA board member and political chair, Izzy Klein, on what we're going to look out for here in New Jersey. And then we're going to get an opportunity to hear from our special guest, my congressman, Gottheimer, on the importance of this upcoming election. So Halie, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Rabbi Kelson. Thanks to all of you for joining tonight. Just looking around, I know many of you. Some of you, I believe, are new to JDCA, so welcome. We are thrilled to relaunch this chapter in New Jersey, recognizing not only that it is home to so many of you, of our supporters, of our friends, but also of a critical segment of the Jewish electorate that's going to help ensure that we re-elect President Biden, that we keep the Senate, and that we win back the House. As Rabbi Kelson said, JDCA's mission is to serve as the voice and the political home of Jewish voters in support of Democrats who share our values. So two things about that mission statement that I want to emphasize for all of you. The first is that we intentionally don't define ourselves solely as the home of Jewish Democrats. Now, of course, our organization is predominantly Jewish Democrats. Our leadership is all Jewish Democrats. But what we see in the Jewish electorate, it's actually changed over time, is that while the largest segment of the Jewish electorate are Democrats, the fastest growing segment are actually nonpartisan or independent voters. And it's very important to our work that we are an organization that is inclusive of those who are either undecided voters, are independent voters, are split ticket voters, frankly, those who intentionally don't want to affiliate with a partisan affiliation. And we do see that more and more with our younger voters. And given just how critical that younger vote and that independent vote is going to be to the outcome of elections, JDCA is certainly an organization that welcomes them. And we also, in our election work and our targeting of voters, we also have included Republicans lately. Our most recent work, it was in the New York 3 special election. You all are well aware of what occurred there. It's a good news story and one that definitely includes the Jewish community and JDCA. Just to recap for you, in our effort to replace our Jewish fraudulent former Congressman George Santos with a Democrat, and recognizing just how important that race was, given the fact that that district had gone for Biden by 8 points in 2020 and then had obviously gone to a Republican in 22, we wanted to flip it back. It was one of 18 such seats that Democrats are targeting in this election that Republicans narrowly won in 2022. That includes at least one seat in New Jersey. We targeted all the Jewish voters in that district, Democrats, independent voters, and Republicans. And we targeted them with a message of the fact that Tom Suozzi shares our views and our values on every important issue for Jewish voters. Yes, this includes support of Israel, but also on reproductive rights and freedoms, on the defense of our democracy, on gun safety, given the epidemic of gun violence that has plagued our communities, our schools, our country. So we talked about all the top issues for Jewish voters. And what we recognized there was that the Jewish vote, which was 11% of that district, can absolutely make the difference. Tom Suozzi ended up winning by 13,000 votes. We targeted almost 80,000 voters in that district, but also that we know Jewish voters are voting on a range of issues. The Republicans thought by selecting an Orthodox Jew who was a former IDF officer that they would automatically win over the Jewish vote. Not so. Tom Suozzi had a very strong record of support of Israel. And ultimately, we're voting on where there's the biggest distinction between the candidates. And for JDCA, we highlighted the issue of choice and of reproductive rights. And in that case, the Republican candidate had said that she thought overturning Roe v. Wade was the right decision. Well, we made an ad about it and we delivered it to every Jewish voter many, many times. Our election work in this cycle will be a replica, essentially, of what we did effectively in that race, looking at each district and state where the Jewish vote can make a difference and where we can effectively not just target voters with our ads, but also reach them directly through direct voter contacts, which we know are absolutely influential, both in persuading our independent voters to vote for the Democratic candidates, but also in getting out the vote the closer we get to this election. And so that is the work of the chapters. That's where all of you come in. Our chapters throughout the country have been very successful. Every cycle, we have more than doubled now our direct voter contact numbers. The last cycle, we made 1.6 million around the country. This cycle, just because we like to double our goals, we are aiming to make more than 3 million, and we're going to need your help. So the role of the chapters is really to serve as our base of support on the ground in New Jersey, giving us information, frankly, about what is happening. You will have a Senate race. Izzy's going to talk more about the political landscape specifically in New Jersey. But it really, and of course you have some competitive House races as well. your role is absolutely going to be critical to our work in this election. And, I know it feels far away, but election day is, I believe, 228 days away. But as we know, a lot of us will vote early. A lot of us will vote by mail. So, we're talking about 200 days pretty much until we're really starting to vote in this election. And the stakes have never been higher, especially when it comes to Jewish values and the issues that Jewish voters prioritize. There has never been a sharper contrast between two presidential candidates than there is between President Biden and, I don't even want to call him former president, the 91-time indicted, twice impeached guy who's running against him. He is. What he represents is not just antithetical to Jewish values, but it's also a direct threat. And we've seen it, in the words that have come out of his mouth. Earlier this week, Donald Trump accused us all, certainly Jewish Democrats, of hating our religion, of hating Israel, said we should be ashamed of ourselves. The only people who should be ashamed, in my view, are those that continue to support him now in this third round, given all that we have seen from him, including his refusal to combat and to denounce white supremacy, and his incitement of right-wing extremists to launch a deadly attack against not just our democracy and the peaceful transfer of power, but against our capital. And we continue to see the results of that, as well as his stated intention to serve as a dictator on day one and continue to erode our democracy. It is our role, our obligation, and I hope you join me in feeling this way and ensuring that he never sets foot in this White House again. And the work of this organization is to ensure that that's not the case, leveraging and continuing to grow the impact of Jewish voters. Now, while we are only 2% of the population and 3% of the electorate, we do have a disproportionately higher impact on the vote because of where we live, because of the fact that we do vote in relatively higher numbers, and because of the fact that we overwhelmingly, about 3/4 of us, do vote for Democrats. We are a critical piece of a winning Democratic coalition. And JDCA, as we continue to grow as an organization, is playing an even more important role. And we are preparing to play a critically important role in winning this election. I do believe that we can not only win the presidency, but take back the House. And for more to talk about that, I'm going to turn it over to our political committee chair and proud New Jerseyan, Izzy Klein, who will talk to us about the stakes in the election, especially in New Jersey. Izzy.
Thank you. One sec. There we go. Thank you so much. And Rabbi Kelson, thank you for opening up this Zoom. I was trying to think of what the joke would be for a rabbi, a mayor, and a lobbyist walk into a bar, but I couldn't come up with the punchline, so I'm gonna just leave that out there. People can find their own punchline, put it in the chat, and let me know how to finish that joke. Look, Haley's exactly right. 6 years ago, I wrote a short op-ed for the Newark Star-Ledger, and talked about how the road to Democrats winning back the House ran through New Jersey, and it did. We won back the House because we mobilized voters in races that were tough. We flipped red districts represented by Republicans in the House to Democrats. People like Mikey Sherrill, Andy Kim, Josh Gottheimer, Tom Malinowski. These people helped us win back the House after Trump was elected to be president. And that is something that we remember, and now we have to continue the work. And I think what Haley mentioned is exactly right. I mean, we're taking that playbook that was run in New York 3 with Tom Suozzi in this special election, and Democrats all around the country are going to be replicating it. This year, this cycle, the House pickup opportunities, there's obviously one significant one in New Jersey, But the road to the House majority will probably run through New York and California. Every other opportunity is sort of onesies and twosies in certain other states like Louisiana, Alabama, oddly enough, and New York and a few others. But it's a very different map this time, but it's one where we have some real opportunities to flip the House. And look, I think that keeping the Senate will be challenging. That also sort of starts in New Jersey. We have to make sure that that seat in New Jersey remains a Democratic seat. We got some news about an hour ago that Senator Menendez will not be running as a Democrat. That does not mean that he will not be running necessarily. He could still run as an independent. And if that's the case, we'll have quite a bit of work to do and in making sure that the seat stays in Democratic hands. And as you all know, there is an active primary going on in New Jersey for the Senate race. There are multiple candidates, and I think one of JDCA's roles will be hopefully to have a candidate forum so that we can hear out each of the candidates on the issues that we care about. And that's one of the great things that we do as an organization, in addition to the voter mobilization, persuasion, et cetera, is we provide a forum for candidates, for Democratic candidates to engage, to answer questions that may be tough, but are important to be answered for all of you. And so we will continue that going forward. There are two main House races, I think, that we're watching closely. The Andy Kim open seat, which is New Jersey 3. That is a more safe Democratic seat. But it's going to be very important that, a new name running in that district will have the kind of support that he or she needs in order to win that seat. The other seat is a pickup opportunity that I mentioned earlier. So this is the New Jersey 7 seat, which was represented by Tom Malinowski for a few cycles, and sort of slipped away to Tom Kean, who is he's a Trump supporter, and Trump supports him. And that's not the kind of person that should be representing a, largely 50-50 district, a swing district in New Jersey. And I believe that in a presidential year, somebody like Tom Kean in a marginal district is in big trouble, particularly if we field a really good candidate. And so I think we're all sort of watching that race and hoping that we'll have the resources to be really competitive and to make sure that Tom Kean doesn't come back to the House. So that's just a very quick run through in New Jersey. There are a lot of other states and districts that we can talk about, both in the presidential contest and in the House and the Senate context. But I also would love to hear any and all questions that you may have and make this a conversation with Halie and me and everybody else.
So we had asked that you post your questions in the chat. I didn't see any yet. Does anyone have a question? We'd love to entertain it. If not, I'm happy just to ask questions that we typically get. I can go ahead and do that.
And obviously, whenever Congressman Gottheimer joins us, we'll pull him on. We'll pull him into the speaking role and introduce him. But in the meantime, look, I think that just to reiterate, there are a handful of states that Democrats have to win, that are on the target list. Many are both a presidential target list and a Senate race. So when you go through the map and you look at Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Nevada. That's really the map for both the presidential race and for the U.S. Senate, with the exception of Georgia. There's not a Senate race. But look, there's a reason why President Biden was in Arizona earlier this week, and he will continue to go through each of those states and a few others. He'll probably be in Jersey to raise some money. He'll be back in New York. I think he's in New York tomorrow. So there's a lot of activity that's going to be going on the political front from now until the convention, and then again post conventions. So it's going to be an exciting year, but it's also going to be, I think, a lot of work for all of us.
Yeah, and just to put a finer point on the priority states, you know, Izzy kind of went through them, but sometimes it helps to have a visual, and that's not it. But I'm trying to share, I'll stop sharing my map with all of you. And I'll just kind of go through it perhaps without the map, because that didn't work out very well. Let me try it one more time. Sharing
as Haley's putting up the map, I did see a couple of commenty, questiony
Oh, good.
in the chat, and I do want to. I should have said this earlier. There was a question about JDCA endorsements in New Jersey, and the truth is we've made a number of endorsements already of incumbent Democrats who are running for re-election. Bill Pascrell, Mikey Sherrill, Josh Gottheimer, and we're working on, as I said, candidate forum for the Senate race, and we may do another candidate forum in one of the other House races. So we're making our way through endorsements in New Jersey, in New York, and all across the country. So hopefully that is helpful to you all to know where we've already made our endorsements, and that's something it's all on our website. And we have a whole section for endorsed candidates. I think you can organize them by state as well. So that was one question that I wanted to address. Did you figure out the share screen?
Oh, yes. Happy to try again. Let's see if this works. Problem is when I go, I keep sharing, it shares this. Okay, I'm just going to discuss the map. As Izzy said, our priority states from west to east include Nevada, and in Nevada, there is a competitive, not only will that be competitive in the presidential, but there will be a competitive Senate seat with the only former synagogue president running for re-election, Jackie Rosen. That last election where Catherine Cortez Masto ran, incumbent senator, similar to Senator Rosen, she won, but very narrowly, 7,900 votes. So we, JDCA, will be very active in the state of Nevada in this upcoming election. Arizona, where not only was President Biden there this week, but JDCA was there this week too. We were on the ground, and our chapter lead in Arizona, Deborah Stein, it looks like, is on this call. So shout out to Deborah in Arizona. We will be very active in Arizona as well. That is a state that President Biden won by actually the narrowest margin in the last election, 10,457 votes. And there's about 100,000 Jewish voters, and that there's also a competitive Senate election there with Kirsten Sinema now stepping down. We will do everything we can for Democrats to win that seat. Then you have Wisconsin. Wisconsin's obviously always very competitive. President Biden won that state by just 20,000 votes in 2020. There too, there's a Senate incumbent that's up for re-election, Senator Baldwin, who joined JDCA just yesterday at our event. In Michigan, we also an open Senate seat. Will be very competitive in terms of the presidential. There you have Alyssa Slotkin running for what was Debbie Stabenow's Senate seat. In Ohio, we have what will be a very competitive Senate race with Senator Sherrod Brown running for re-election. It's always a competitive, I like to think of it as a competitive state in the presidential. I'd like to think that we could win it back in the presidential. We shall see. Then, of course, there's Pennsylvania, over 275,000 Jewish voters there. As we know, President Biden won that state by 80,000 votes in the last election, always competitive there. And there is a Senate race there with Senator Casey running for re-election. And then, as Izzy said, also, we cannot forget about Georgia, which, of course, President Biden won by 11,779 votes, which we'll never forget, thanks to the Fulton County's indictment of him. And in that state, also about 100,000 Jewish voters, and we've played a critical difference in their many elections between the generals and the runoff. Then we had 2 of each in the past 2 cycles. So those will be our priority states when it comes to the Senate and the presidential. And then, as Izzy said, the House races will go beyond that, and we're looking very closely at those many House races in New York that we aim to win back, as well as, of course, there are other competitive Senate races. We are hopeful that we will keep that New Jersey Senate seat blue, and as Izzy said, we do plan on having a forum in that primary sometime soon, certainly before your primary, but in the coming weeks, we will host a forum so you can hear from your Democratic candidates running in that race about the priorities of Jewish voters.
So Haley's going to take a breath. I'm going to start reading. There are a couple of really good questions that we've gotten in the chat since Halie and I started filibustering. So we really appreciate the questions. So from Sean, will Biden go to the Knesset if Netanyahu speaks to the Republican House? I'm going to toss that question to Halie because I think it's a really good one. And then we have a number of others that we want to get to as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think we should think of it as the Republican House. Yes, they have a very narrow and dwindling majority, and I know there was already a narrative out there that that it was Speaker Johnson who is going to invite him. By the way, the Speaker has to invite anyone to address the House, including the President of the State of the Union. That's just procedurally how it works. But Senator Schumer today said he would support such a move, and unlike when Netanyahu spoke before the House in 2015 regarding the JCPOA or the Iran nuclear deal. It was a very divisive and partisan movement. I'd like to think that this wouldn't be quite the same if he were to speak, that Democrats would probably be in the audience, just as we obviously are very strong supporters of Israel, including, of course, the Democratic leader in the Senate, Senator Schumer. And we heard much of that support in his speech last week, even if I know there's a lot of perception of controversy around the speech. I do encourage everyone to read it closely because it is unmistakable in terms of his staunch support of Israel in that speech throughout. It's a 45-minute speech. You cannot summarize it in one line, but he definitely reiterated his strong support of Israel. Now, should President Biden kind of go to the Knesset in turn? As far as I'm concerned, he's already done much more than go to the Knesset for a speech. He went to Israel twice during his presidency, but he went after the horrific attack of October 7th. He traveled to Israel, the first U.S. president during wartime to do so, and reiterated his unequivocal support for the Israeli people in the aftermath of the horrific attack by Hamas on October 7th. He pledged on October 20th $14.3 billion in U.S. assistance to Israel. It's an unprecedented amount of money that Republicans have repeatedly delayed and obstructed in terms of their efforts to put up different kinds of votes, at one point condition it on unrelated cuts to the IRS, and then it got caught up in the very politicized fight over aid for our assistance for our border security money. At the moment, it has gone nowhere. It's just languished. I can tell you that if Democrats had controlled the House, it certainly would be in Israel by now, because we have a president who not only supported that money, but it was his idea to send it to the Israelis in the first place. He's been a remarkable president when it comes to support of Israel. Of course, this predates October 7th, but after October 7th, his support and solidarity with Israel has been truly remarkable. And of course, if you contrast that with Donald Trump, who on October 11th was mocking Prime Minister Netanyahu, making fun of Israel, calling Israel weak, and praising Hezbollah. And yes, he did do all that. We made an ad about it, but also you can Google it. It happened in West Palm Beach on October 11th, the same day that President Biden told us that all Jews, that he has our back, and spoke to the Jewish community about his support of Israel. Again, the contrast could not be more stark. So I don't think that President Biden needs to go speak to the Knesset. He has reiterated time and time again his support of Israel, including in his State of the Union. He dedicated a whole section of the speech to Israel, and as you know, had hostage family members there, has repeatedly talked about his ongoing efforts to get hostages out and to get more assistance in. We also have to give him credit for the role that he played in the release of over 100 hostages in November. So he doesn't need to prove anything in terms of his support of Israel. I don't know what's going to happen, whether Netanyahu will come or not. But if he does, I assume Democrats would be there, because we are supporters of Israel.
So that's a good segue to the next question that Tanya kindly put in the chat. How should we address the number of Democrats who oppose Israel? I've heard that some Jewish people say that the Republicans are solidly pro-Israel, but many Dems are not. How can we handle this while we are trying to get Democrats elected? It's a great question. I will take it and then hand it over to Halie. Look, I think when you're talking about Democrats who are in the House of Representatives, there's about a handful and a half of members of Congress who are extremely loud and not particularly friendly to Israel. You have other Democrats who I think are rightly critical of the Israeli government, this particular Israeli government, but otherwise are extremely supportive of the Israeli people and the state of Israel. And I think being able to, draw the differential between the 5 or 6 Democrats who don't speak for the caucus and everybody else is really important. And even those 5 or 6 have voted for the various resolutions that condemned October 7th. And so I think we need to make sure that we are putting some of the louder voices into context, and remember that campaigns are not won or lost on Twitter and who has the quickest punch on Twitter. It's really about where the vast majority of Democrats, the vast majority of elected Democrats are, and I think that's extremely pro-Israel, starting with the guy sitting in the White House and all the way down, all the way across the country. The vast majority of Democrats are solidly pro-Israel, and I think we just need to keep saying it, and we as an organization stand up when the small handful of Democrats are saying or doing the wrong things when it comes to Israel or anti-Semitism, et cetera. So I think it's just important that we are able to put this into context as we are doing the work that we have to do. Halie, do you want to add?
Yeah, and we're going to have Congressman Gottheimer join I believe he has joined. He's a good person to perhaps address this as well. But I would just say leadership absolutely matters. And the leader of our party, President Joe Biden, nobody has a longer and stronger record of support of Israel. He has been a supporter of Israel in elected office for over 50 years. He has demonstrated that support at every critical moment, including in the aftermath of the horrific attack on October 7th. He's the leader of our party. And, if you contrast that, as I mentioned, with the other guy who mocked Israel in the aftermath of October 7th and praised a terrorist organization, there's just no comparison. So I'm proud to now turn it over to your Congressman, Josh Gottheimer. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, how are you? How's everything?
Hey,
Great.
Congressman.
We just received a question regarding support of Israel in Congress. So I don't know if you wanted to speak to that. You are one of the strongest supporters. So we'd love to hear from you.
What was the specific question? I am in Congress and I'm Jewish, and I support Israel, so that's 3 for 3.
There you
What-
go. The specific question had to do with the small handful of members of our party who are not supportive of Israel, who don't share our views.
Yeah, it's as you've just pointed out, it's a extremely small cancer in the caucus. And frankly, the Republicans suffer the same small minority of people who are loud and not supportive of the U.S.-Israel relationship. And many of us have called them out for years when we've had problems. But listen, since October 7th, we've seen some very vocal people in our party. Again, a very small number of people. Like there's and I'll point to one vote in particular. After, I guess it was the week or so after October 7th, we held a vote on condemning Hamas, and there were 14 Democrats who voted no on that. I called it despicable what they did. That was my nicest thing I could come up with immediately. But of about 200, you had 14 people, and I'd say that's what you're talking about, just relative. And of the 14, I'd say probably 10 of those or 8 of those are consistently what you and I'd consider not great. It's a very tiny number compared to the overwhelming support for the U.S.-Israel relationship.
Great. We had also talked about the aid to Israel that President Biden pledged when he returned from Israel in October, the $14.3 billion. I asserted, but you would know better, that if Democrats controlled the House, Israel would have that assistance now that Republicans have repeatedly kind of played games with it and obstructed it and delayed it. But I'm interested in hearing from you, your perspective, and how we can finally get that aid to Israel.
Well, many of us have been working around the clock on that. Just for everyone, for the knowledge for our folks, we passed the Senate, and I worked on this with a group of people, recently passed with 70 senators, right? So hugely bipartisan, an aid package for not only military aid, but humanitarian aid for Israel and humanitarian aid for Gaza, Ukraine resources, Taiwan resources. And it's now been sitting, waiting for us to vote in the House for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it is incredibly frustrating because if they actually brought it for a vote in the House, it would pass, right? But right now, because it has Ukraine money in it, it's actually being held up because a majority of the Republicans in the House do not want to vote for Ukraine funding. And so therefore, the Republicans don't like to bring bills to the floor where a majority of their own party won't vote for it, even though you'd get nearly every Democrat to vote for it. They won't bring it to the floor because they can't get a majority of their party want to support Ukraine. So what we're looking at doing is, do you do a separate Israel package again? We've had them. They didn't include, they didn't actually include any humanitarian aid in it, which was a flag. Democrats don't want to vote for just Israel money without Ukraine money, and which I understand, although there's been some votes up on just Israel money, and I've supported them, but it's hard to get the whole Democratic caucus for that. So what we've really been focused on is how do we get this Senate bill to the floor for a vote? And I'm hoping that when we can come back from Passover and Easter, our Easter recess, we'll be able to do it.
Josh, along those lines, the way to do that is through a discharge petition. And I know that takes a whole lot of effort to get the signatures to sort of push something directly to the floor. How is that going? I assume that you're sort of at the center of all of that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've tried every which way known to mankind to do this. So one of the ways we're working on, and I work in a bipartisan way often to try to get things done. One of the ways we've been working on is what's called a discharge petition. Like, so if they don't bring it to the floor, you can force leadership's hand and actually kind of go around them, because leadership gets to decide. The majority leadership, the Republicans, get to decide if they're going to bring something to the floor. They have a lot of power to be able to decide what gets voted on and not voted on. So one way to do it is use something you call a discharge petition. You basically, all 218 members, a majority of the House, goes and sign a piece of paper that says, we demand you bring this to the floor for a vote. It takes about a month for that process to even ripen enough where you can do it. We have there's two petitions sitting there. One, the Democrats are leading with, Hakeem is leading, our leader, and one, the Republicans and Democrats, a group of us, are leading on a bill. So there's two. We've gotten about 180 of the 218 in the Democratic one. It will require some Republicans to sign it. And the other bill, that's the other one that's bipartisan, we don't have that many. I think we have 20 people, because generally, and this is the problem, I'll be honest, people in the majority don't like to sign these things because it's, considered a rude and disrespectful and undermining move to your own leadership. So it's often not it's not supported. So it's hard to get the Republicans willing to sign one of these pieces of paper, and we don't have enough Democrats. So that's been the challenge. The bipartisan one that I'm doing, we're not getting a lot of Democrats because it's bipartisan, and some Democrats don't want to sign on one of those because it's being led by a Republican, even though it's bipartisan. So we're trying that. That's why we are working, and I've got a couple other ways that I'm working with a group of senators on, which I can't go into any more detail than that, but we're working on that as well. So believe me, I'm trying every single path possible here.
We appreciate it. Can I ask you recently, I mean, we all, of course, watched the State of the Union and were thrilled with the president's, both his delivery, but also the substance. It was truly kind of exhilarating and inspiring as we head into this election. You were actually in the room and probably felt it in ways that couldn't even really be conveyed over TV. Can you tell us a little bit about the State of the Union, how it was received, whatever also kind of impact it may have as we head into November?
But for those of you, I think it came through on TV, but it's like he brought his A game, and you like, it was, listen, I won't tell you that people weren't anxious going into it, because that wouldn't be truthful, but people, when he delivered, and I talked to him after, a bunch of us were hanging around with him after. He hung out for an extra half hour. We were talking to him, and listen, he not only handled the Republicans deftly, but also, I think his message was very clear. And if you look at the issues overall, this is why I believe this is about common sense versus extremism, which is why I believe ultimately we win in November. I think it's going to be a fight, but we win. And but it was great, and we got a lot of work to do, and we'll keep doing it. But I just want you to know that I think that was like a really pivotal turning point in some of them, in the shift of momentum. So it was great.
I felt that way. And can we also get your response to the other guy just a few days ago telling us all that we hate our religion, we hate Israel, and we should be ashamed of ourselves? What was your response to that?
You just said it. I don't know how to answer.
I'm wondering what your response.
Our response was, I mean, I'd love to say I'm just surprised by, it's been so many years of comments like that it's hard for me to even muster up, like, what's the latest outrage that I can feel, and the new way to talk about how outraged I am. It's been so many years of that kind of divisive, hate-filled language that, is just used once again as a way to tear people apart, when I think what we need in our country more than ever is bring people together. And we know who our enemies are. We're seeing it now in the Middle East with all the Iranian-backed proxies, and we should be focusing on not tearing each other apart, but actually focus on the people who are our enemies. And using this as a political tool is despicable. But frankly, again, we dealt with this for years. We're going to be dealing with it for years if we don't stop them. And that's why what we're doing is so important, to make sure we put an end to it and support our president, support reasonableness, stop extremists, and I'm on the intelligence committee. I'll tell you, the only Jewish guy on the intelligence committee, 24/7 for me is focusing on what we can do to get the hostages out, dismantle Hamas, and make sure we provide humanitarian aid. And we know the roadmap here. We know what we need to do. Now we just gotta stand by our key ally, and that to me is critically important, and stand up to anti-Semitism and hate in all forms, which is continue to explode in our communities in northern New Jersey. And it's incredibly upsetting, but we've got to stand up to it. I have to go, but I did want to pop in to say hi. Thank you for letting me pop in for a minute.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank you,
thanks for
Gottheimer.
representing New Jersey and so well, especially the Jewish community. We're grateful. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Grateful for what you guys do. Keep up the fight. Keep up what you do.
Thank
and
you.
thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Thank-
Josh. Well,
Great.
for those of you who wanted a proper introduction to Josh and didn't get it, just very quickly, he sits on the Intel committee, as he noted, and the Financial Services Committee. Josh was an instant mover and shaker when he came to DC. And so we were really thrilled to be able to get him for a few minutes, and he's just doing incredible work here, reaching across the aisle and doing the hard work that needs to be done to actually legislate. So we're grateful to him, and thank you all for bearing with the little delay there.
Yeah, no, and it's not easy, as you can imagine, especially in the House, to work across the aisle. He goes to great lengths. Sometimes even, it's difficult even for him within his own party. So he deserves a lot of credit for the work that he's doing to get things done. I think we're going to now turn it over to one of the chapter leads in New Jersey, Jeff Grizel, to close us out. Over to you, Jeff.
Thanks, Halie, and thanks, Izzy, for your work during this conference call, and thank you to Representative Gottheimer. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us tonight. My name is Jeff Grizel, and I, along with Rabbi Ben Kelson, are the chapter leads here of the JDCA New Jersey chapter. A little background about myself: I was raised in Englewood, where my parents still live, and Josh Gottheimer is the representative of Englewood. And I have spent the past 26 years in Morris Township, and my representative is Mikey Sherrill. I've been a member of the Morris Township Committee, that's the town council, for 11 years, having served 2 terms as mayor and currently as the deputy mayor in 2024. And when I was first elected in 2007, I became the very first Democrat to be elected to my town council in the 33 years since Watergate. And then in 2019, after the blue wave in 2018, I was proud to become the very first Democratic mayor ever in Morris Township. I am also a member of the board of directors of my synagogue and serve on the Jewish Community Relations Council of Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West that covers Essex, Morris, and Union counties. Earlier tonight, Rabbi Kelson had mentioned the name of June Fisher, who's a matriarch of politics here in New Jersey. I also wanted to acknowledge the presence on this call of another Jewish leader in New Jersey, Lori Klinghoffer. Lori has served in numerous capacities for both JFNA and my federation of Greater Metro West. And thank you, Lori, for joining us tonight. As you have heard throughout tonight's program, this is just the beginning of our work for the 2024 election cycle. In New Jersey, we have 3 critical races, I believe. One is, as we discussed earlier, the U.S. Senate race, but we also have critical races in flipping CD7, as Izzy had spoken about earlier, and also in CD3, where Andy Kim has given up his seat to run for U.S. Senate. So Those are three very important elections right here in New Jersey. And now is the time to grow our movement and our people's power and prepare to get the Jewish vote out for Democrats in November. And this is exactly why we're relaunching our New Jersey chapter and why we're doing it now, 8 months before this year's election, with multiple competitive races in our state and across the country. We are going to do everything we can to support Democrats who share our values. I am involved with JDCA because I believe in the importance of a strong and unified Jewish voice here in New Jersey. I believe that as a national organization dedicated to electing Democrats to Congress and the presidency, JDCA is well suited to bring Jewish Democrats in New Jersey together. My Jewish upbringing and values have driven me to get involved. They drive me in my work as mayor and the other work that I do in the community. And that is why I hope you will join me in the work we are doing here with JDCA in New Jersey. To learn more about volunteering with us, please click on the chapter interest form that's in the chat, and a JDCA staff member will follow up with you. We're also going to send out a follow-up email, and we'll include that in the email as well. We're also sending a link to our chapter Facebook page, so to make sure you click on that as well. And together, we can make a difference for Democrats and protect our Jewish values here in New Jersey and across the country. We also encourage you to join JDCA for our next national event on Wednesday, April 10th from 12 to 1 p.m. to discuss immigration policy and the 2024 election. The event will feature Lene Jackson, Third Way's Senior Vice President for Social Policy, Education, and Politics, as well as the Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy. The link for that is also in the chat. And as Izzy and Halie mentioned earlier, we are looking to put together a forum for the U.S. Senate candidates here in New Jersey to ensure that our Jewish values are heard by them. So I want to thank everybody again for joining us here tonight, and we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you so much.